Okay, so today we're going deep on glucagon lab values.
Right.
And, we talk a lot about insulin on this show,
Right.
but glucagon, it's kind of like the other side of the coin, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. You've got insulin, which is bringing blood sugar down, and then when you need it, you've got glucagon bringing it back up.
Like a seesaw.
Exactly. A perfect analogy. It's all about balance. And this hormone, it's made in your pancreas. It's really the key to understanding how your body manages energy, how it uses and stores glucose.
And I think for a lot of our listeners, especially those who are managing diabetes, this is going to be super relevant.
Oh, absolutely. And what's fascinating? There's this whole new area of research emerging about glucagon's role in things like appetite and weight management.
Really?
It's pretty cutting edge stuff, but we can definitely circle back to that later.
Yeah, let's put a pin in that for now.
Okay.
Because first, I think we need to get back to basics.
Right.
What are we even talking about when we say normal glucagon levels?
Good point. So typically for both adults and children, you're looking at a range of 50 to 150 pgml.
PGML. Now, I know we've got some science-minded folks listening.
Yeah.
But for those who aren't familiar with the lingo, what does it even mean?
So pgml stands for picograms per milliliter. It's a way of measuring these incredibly tiny amounts of glucagon that are circulating in your blood.
So we're talking minute amounts here,
Oh, yeah. Minuscule.
but they can have a big impact, right?
Absolutely. These levels, they're not just static. They respond to all sorts of things that are happening in your body.
Like what?
Well, think about your diet, for example. If you had a steak last night, all that protein, that probably triggered a pretty significant glucagon response.
More so than, say, a big bowl of pasta.
Exactly. Carbohydrates tend to stimulate more of an insulin release, whereas protein, that's a glucagon booster.
So even just choosing between steak and pasta for dinner can impact these hormone levels?
It can. And it all ties back to this idea of balance. If you're going for a while without eating, say you're fasting, or maybe you just skipped lunch, your body needs a way to keep your energy levels stable.
Right. Otherwise, you just crash.
Exactly. And that's where glucagon steps in. It signals to your liver, hey, we need some of that stored glucose. Let's release it into the bloodstream.
So like a backup generator.
Yeah, a perfect analogy.
And what about exercise? Does that factor into the equation too?
Oh, absolutely. When you're working out your muscles, they're demanding more fuel, and glucagon helps to meet that demand and make sure there's enough glucose available to keep you going.
It's all about supply and demand.
You got it.
Now, earlier you mentioned certain medications that can influence glucagon activity.
Yeah.
GLP-1 agonists, was it?
Right. Those are becoming increasingly important in the management of type 2 diabetes.
Okay, how do they work?
Well, in part, they actually boost the natural action of glucagon in the body, which helps to improve blood sugar control. It's a really interesting mechanism because it's working alongside insulin, not just trying to replace it.
So it's more about fine-tuning that balance we keep talking about.
Exactly.
Now, we've talked a lot about the factors that can influence glucagon levels, but what happens when things are out of whack? What does it mean if someone's glucagon is too high or too low?
That's a great question, and that's where we start talking about the clinical significance of these values. So let's start with elevated glucagon, what we call hyperglucagonemia.
Okay.
Now, one very rare cause of this could be something called a glucagonoma.
A glucagonoma.
Yeah, it's a tumor in the pancreas that overproduces glucagon.
Oh, wow. So that's serious.
It can be, but like I said, it's very rare. Much more commonly, high glucagon is linked to diabetes mellitus.
Right. Which makes sense because...
Exactly. In diabetes, the body isn't managing insulin effectively, which throws off that whole delicate balance between insulin and glucagon, and you end up with those elevated glucagon levels.
So it's all connected.
It really is. But here's another interesting thing. That fight or flight response we all experience when we're stressed?
Oh, yeah.
Well, guess what? Glucagon is part of that, too. When you're under stress, your body releases glucagon to help mobilize energy so you can deal with the situation. It's like your body's getting ready for action.
Wow. So our emotions can actually impact our hormone levels.
They absolutely can. It's all interconnected.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we've talked about high glucagon. What about low glucagon?
Right. So low glucagon, or hypoglucagonemia, as it's called, can sometimes be a sign of pancreatic insufficiency.
Pancreatic insufficiency, what does that mean?
It means the pancreas, which is responsible for producing both digestive enzymes and hormones like insulin and glucagon, isn't functioning the way it should.
So it's not just about low glucagon. There are other things going on too.
Right. It can affect digestion and other important processes. It's a bit more complex.
So it's like the factory that produces glucagon is having some issues?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Interesting. Okay, and are there other causes of low glucagon?
There can be. Sometimes it's related to too much insulin activity. You see if your body's producing an excess of insulin that can actually suppress glucagon production.
It's that balance again.
Exactly.
So how do doctors figure out if someone's glucagon levels are off?
Well, it usually starts with a simple blood test,
Okay.
typically done after fasting for about 8 hours. That gives us the most accurate baseline reading, and then the lab analyzes the sample to measure those tiny amounts of glucagon we were talking about earlier.
So you're not just looking at a single number, you're considering the whole picture, right?
Absolutely. It's like detective work. We use the glucagon level along with the patient's medical history, their symptoms, and other test results to get a complete understanding of what's going on.
So it's a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
Well, this has been so insightful. I feel like we've really gone deep on glucagon today, and it's clear that understanding these lab values, it's about so much more than just a number. It's about understanding how our bodies regulate energy, how we respond to different situations.
I couldn't agree more. It's crucial for assessing metabolic health managing conditions like diabetes and even understanding how our bodies react to stress.
It's all connected, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about all the research that's gone into uncovering these intricate hormone systems.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling, really, to think about all these complex processes happening within us all the time. How do scientists even begin to unravel all that?
It is remarkable, isn't it? The human body is an incredible machine.
It really is. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today, but I encourage everyone listening to keep exploring, keep learning more about these fascinating systems that keep us going.
That's a great message.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Sounds good.
You've been listening to the Learning Podcast, a production of metaNESTA. Remember, learning is a journey. One step, one insight, one skill at a time. We'll see you next time. Keep learning, stay curious, and as always, be awesome.